Zara hadn't planned to be out this late, but night driving paid better, and right now, every extra cash counted. Her son's school fees were due in 2 weeks, her rent was already late, and the pharmacy job wasn't cutting it, so driving helped fill the gap. She accepted a ride that offered good pay and wasn't far from her current location. The estate was tucked away behind high gates and trimmed hedges. As soon as she pulled up, a man stepped out and got into the back seat without a word. He leaned back and told her to drive for an hour and he would pay whatever it cost. When she asked if he had a destination in mind, he simply told her to just keep driving. That was fine with her. It was his money, after all. He didn't say anything after that, and she also didn't push. He looked like someone carrying too much on his shoulders, and she wasn't in the mood for small talk anyway. About 15 minutes passed in silence. The man sat in the back, looking miserable. She glanced at him through the rearview mirror, asked if he was all right, and he said he was fine, though everything about him said otherwise. She gently asked again, trying to read his face, but he didn't respond this time. Zara frowned slightly and turned her eyes back to the road. Whatever was eating at him, he clearly didn't want to talk about it. The rest of the ride was quiet. After nearly an hour, he tapped the back of her seat, signaling her to stop near a tall apartment building. He transferred the full amount for the ride, added a generous tip, then stepped out without saying anything else. Just before driving off, she glanced down at her phone to check the transfer details. His name stood out, Mason Reed. Her eyes widened. She knew that name. Mason was the only son of Chief Reed, the powerful businessman who had recently passed away. His face had been all over the news, usually in sharp suits beside his father. But tonight, he looked nothing like the headlines. Zara locked her phone and placed it beside her. Whatever Mason Reed was going through, it wasn't her concern. She shifted the car into gear and drove into the main road. The next day moved along like any other, filled with work and everything in between. By evening, Zara was finally home, slipping off her shoes and sinking into the couch when her phone buzzed with a new ride request. She glanced at the screen and it was the same pickup location as the night before. After a brief pause, she accepted the request. She wasn't sure why she said yes. Maybe it was because of the generous tip he had left, or maybe it was simply curiosity that made her want to see him again. But when she pulled up at the estate gate, the man came out and got into the back seat without a word, just like he did last night. Zara adjusted her mirror and quietly joked that he was starting to make this a habit. He didn't respond right away, but after a pause, he spoke and apologized for the night before, admitting when she had asked if he was okay and he hadn't replied. It hadn't been on purpose, he said. He just didn't have the words then. Zara was a little surprised by the honesty, so she nodded and kept driving. He leaned back against the seat, staring out the window. She noticed how he kept glancing behind them every now and then, like he was expecting someone to follow. After a long silence, he spoke again. "Do you know somewhere quiet I could go?" Zara thought for a second, then turned off the main road. "I know a place," she said simply. She took him to a small bookstore tucked beside a quiet cafe, hidden away from the busy parts of town. When they arrived, he stepped out slowly and looked around, taking it all in before giving a small nod. "Thanks." She waited in the car while he went inside, staying for nearly an hour before coming back out and getting in the car again. They drove in silence for a while until Zara glanced at the mirror and asked, "Are you feeling any better now?" And he nodded, saying, "Yes, I am." The break really helped. She gave a small nod in return as she kept her eyes on the road and didn't say anything more. He turned slightly and looked at her for a few seconds and said he needed someone just like her. She glanced at him, asking what he meant. He explained that he was looking for a driver just for 2 weeks, someone who could show up when needed and would keep things quiet, without starting conversations unless he did. Then he added that he would pay her a fixed daily rate, double whatever she was currently earning. Zara gave a small frown and said softly, "I already have a job, so I don't think I can accept this offer." He didn't press or try to explain further. Instead, he stayed quiet for the rest of the ride. When they reached his building, he pulled out a small business card from his wallet and handed it to her. "Just think about it," he said. She took the card and watched as he stepped out of the car, shut the door behind him, and walked away without saying anything else. Later that night, Zara lay on her bed, holding her phone to her ear. She had called her best friend, Lola, because she needed to talk. "The guy I told you about, the one from yesterday, he offered me a temporary job. He said that he needed a private driver, someone quiet, who won't ask too many questions or start random conversations," she said. Lola didn't hesitate. "You should take it. That pharmacy job isn't doing much for you." Zara let out a sigh. "I know this, but it still feels risky. I don't know anything about him." "You don't have to. You're not dating him. Just do your job, get your money and walk away if anything feels off." Zara chuckled softly, but she didn't respond. They moved on to other things after that until they finally ended the call. When the line went dead, Zara looked at the business card still sitting on her bedside table. She stared at it for a long time, thinking. Then she picked up her phone and typed a short message to the number on the card. "I accept the offer. I'll be your driver for 2 weeks." One Tuesday afternoon, the ride started like any other. "So what's the plan for today?" Zara asked. Mason leaned back and looked out the window for a moment before saying, "I don't really have one. I just needed to get out, maybe hang out somewhere." "With you?" Zara raised an eyebrow. "Hang out with me?" He gave a smile and nodded. "Yeah." She looked amused but didn't argue. "I think I've got something in mind." A few turns later, she glanced at him again. "Have you ever tried street food?" He looked puzzled. "Not really." "Well, you're about to," she replied. Zara drove them across town and eventually pulled up near a familiar corner filled with small food stalls. It wasn't fancy, just a spot she knew well. The kind of place where no one cared who you were as long as you paid. Mason followed without question, his eyes scanning the scene like it was foreign territory. She ordered for both of them and handed him a plate. He looked down at it, hesitant. "What is this?" She gave a smile and encouraged him to have a taste. He paused, then took a bite, and his brows rose in surprise. "This is actually good." "Of course it's good," she replied with a smile. "Rich folks always act like street food is beneath them." He glanced at her, amused. "Is that what you think of me?" She shot him a quick look. "I mean, you hesitated like I handed you a live frog, not dinner." That made him laugh, the kind that slipped out before he could stop it. Afterward, they wandered through a few small market stalls nearby. Zara did most of the talking while Mason stood beside her, quiet. When it was time to pay, he stepped forward and settled the bill without a word. As they were about to leave, the man behind the table gave them a cheerful smile. "You two look good together," the vendor said warmly. Zara opened her mouth to respond, but Mason spoke first. "Thank you," he replied, then glanced at her and added with a small smile, "I got lucky." Zara nearly spilled her drink. Mason walked off, thanking the vendor again with a quick nod. She shook her head and hurried after him. "You didn't mean that, did you?" she asked, catching up beside him. He glanced at her, a grin spreading across his face. Zara gave a playful shove to his arm and he barely reacted, he just kept smiling to himself like he was completely entertained. She shook her head, trying not to laugh. "You're enjoying this way too much." He gave a soft chuckle, not even trying to deny it, and said, "Maybe I am." The rest of the day went by easily. Mason asked her a lot of questions, enough to keep the conversation going, and Zara found herself talking more than usual. Later, as they got back into the car, the ride was quiet again. Mason looked out the window, like always. But halfway through, he leaned forward and asked what peace looked like for her. Zara didn't know how to answer. She hadn't thought about peace in a long time. Her days were full of worries, there was no space to dream. She told him maybe peace meant not waking up every day worrying about money. When they got to his place, Mason didn't go inside right away, instead he stood by the car for a second. "Thank you for today," he told her. Zara gave a small nod. "Anytime." He looked like he wanted to say something more, but just turned, walking away instead. She waited until he was gone, then drove off into the night. After the funeral, Mason couldn't breathe. There were too many people pretending they knew his father. Maybe some of them really did, but Mason wasn't sure he ever had. He slipped out through a side gate before the final prayers ended, walking until the noise faded. Then he took out his phone, calling Zara without thinking. She answered quickly and he told her he needed some company. Zara told him her son was home, so she couldn't leave, but if he didn't mind, she'd come pick him up and bring him to her place. He agreed without hesitation. 20 minutes later, she pulled up. Neither of them said much during the drive, but the silence wasn't awkward, it was just what he needed. Her apartment was clean and had a warm, homely feel. Zara nodded toward the hallway. Her son, Tolu, peeked out holding a toy. Mason gave a small smile and waved. Tolu stepped closer, eyeing him curiously. "Is he your friend?" he asked Zara without looking away. Before either of them could answer, Tolu gave a little grin, then walked off like he'd already made up his mind. Mason chuckled under his breath. Within minutes, Mason found himself sitting on the floor while Tolu explained the rules of a made-up game, speaking with more confidence than most adults. Zara didn't say much. She sat at the edge of a nearby chair, quietly watching them. Eventually, Tolu grew bored and wandered off, focused on building something with his plastic blocks. With the boy distracted, the moment settled, giving them space to talk. Mason sat there and spoke calmly. He didn't think he would feel anything that day. He thought he would just show up, do what was expected, and leave. But it surprised him, it really hit him. He spoke about how he hadn't been close to his father for years. How most of their talks ended in arguments or were just about business. His father liked to control everything. And even though he was gone now, Mason still felt like he had to do what his father would have wanted. Zara didn't say anything, she just listened. Mason said he grew up in London and he never felt like he belonged there. But he also didn't feel at home here either. Everywhere felt temporary for him. Zara looked out the window and gently told him about Tolu's father and how he left when the boy was still very young. Since then, she'd been doing everything alone. Sometimes there were months where she didn't know how they even made it through. She sighed softly. "You don't need to grow up rich to feel like you're drowning. You're not the only one who feels this way. I feel it too, even though I don't have money, so no, you're not alone." They sat quietly after that. Eventually, Zara stood. "Come on. Let's go for a walk." They walked through the neighborhood, Tolu in the middle, gripping both their hands. Mason didn't know how long they walked. Maybe 30 minutes or an hour. All he knew was that it was the first time in weeks he wasn't thinking about anything stressful. He just watched Tolu laugh, listened to Zara talk and felt not alone. When they got back, Tolu ran inside first. Zara lingered by the door, asking if he was doing all right. Mason nodded. "Yes. I think I am." When they got inside, she handed him a pillow and let him sleep on the couch. From that point on, Mason began texting her more often, sometimes just to talk, other times to ask if they could hang out. It became a regular thing. Slowly, without meaning to, they turned into each other's safe space. And before long, Zara found herself looking forward to those moments just as much as he did. Zara was already having a tough month. Her landlord was on her case again, reminding her, loudly, that rent was overdue. On top of that, her son's school fees were around the corner. She kept telling herself she'd figure it out like always. Then the letter came. Tolu's school had sent home an announcement about a new scholarship program. 2 students would be selected for full tuition support. Zara read it and barely gave it a second thought. Scholarships like that never go to people like them. It sounded like one of those things schools announce just to sound helpful. But a few days later, Tolu came running through the front door, waving a sealed envelope in his hand. Zara opened the letter slowly, reading it once and then again to be sure she was seeing correctly. Tolu had been selected. She held him tight and kissed his forehead, feeling something lift off her shoulders. She felt pure joy. Her boy had worked hard. Maybe someone finally noticed. That feeling lasted until Saturday afternoon. She was chatting with another mother while waiting outside a birthday party when the woman casually mentioned that the scholarship had come from a tech company, Reed Technologies. Zara froze. The woman kept talking, unaware of the shift in Zara's posture, saying she'd heard it had been introduced that term and funded by one of their executives. Apparently, someone from the company had a personal reason for starting it, she added. Zara didn't respond. But her mind was already putting the pieces together. She waited until Monday, after dropping Tolu off, then walked straight into the school office. She told the staff she wanted to confirm some details about the scholarship. The secretary told her it was a new program and it came from Reed Technologies, she said with a smile. Zara nodded and left quietly. That evening, she drove straight to Mason's apartment. When she pulled up outside his building, she sat in the car for a few minutes. She needed to be calm, but the mix of gratitude and anger was hard to untangle. Finally, she got out and walked up to his door. Mason opened it a few seconds after she knocked. His expression shifted from surprise to concern the moment he saw her face. "You did it, didn't you?" she asked, stepping inside. He looked at her, unsure. "Did what?" "The scholarship," she said. "You created it for Toulouse and added one more student just to make it look normal." He didn't deny it. "He's a smart kid, Zara. It was deserving. You went behind my back without even asking me." "I didn't think I needed to. I mean, it's not like I handed you cash. It's a school scholarship, and your son earned it," he replied slowly. "But that is exactly the problem," she snapped. "You think doing it quietly makes it better, but it doesn't. It is sneaky and insulting. You made me feel small. Like I couldn't take care of my own child." Mason looked frustrated. "But I was only trying to help." She shook her head. "I've been doing this on my own for years, and my son is very smart. If he gets a scholarship, it should be from someone who actually sees his potential, not because of pity. We are not beggars, Mason." Mason stepped forward, quieter now. "I didn't mean it like that. But that's how it feels." There was a long silence. Zara's voice softened, but her words didn't. "I don't want your charity and don't contact me again." She walked away without looking back. Mason stood in the doorway for a long time after she left, the words still hanging in the air. A few days passed and Zara hadn't expected to see Mason again so soon. After their last argument, she had made it clear she didn't want to see him anymore. But that afternoon, there he was, standing beside her car outside the pharmacy with a tired look on his face. She slowed down, unsure if she should keep walking, but something in his face stopped her. As she approached, Mason spoke calmly, saying he wasn't there to argue, he just wanted to talk. Zara didn't respond right away. She checked the time and told him he had 10 minutes. He nodded, glanced down for a second, then looked back up and said, "I was wrong. I thought I was helping, but I didn't think about how it would make you feel. That's on me." Zara stood still with her arms crossed. She didn't say anything yet. "I'm not good with people," he continued. "I wasn't raised around people who asked what others needed. We just did what we thought was best and moved on. But you're not a project, and your life isn't something I get to fix." "I see that now." Zara's tone remained calm as she spoke, telling him he couldn't force his way into people's lives just because he had the resources to do it. "That wasn't care," she said, "it was control, even if it didn't look like it." Mason stood quietly for a moment, taking in her words. Then he nodded, admitting that he understood now. He promised not to do anything like that again without talking to her first. There was a pause between them. Then Mason said he missed talking to her, even if most of it was complaining about traffic and her, convincing him that street food wouldn't kill him. Zara cracked a smile and asked if it did kill him. He grinned and said, barely, before teasing her that he still believed she had bribed the vendor to serve him the spiciest plate on purpose. Zara's laugh grew loud and the sound pulled something in both of them back into place. "If you're willing, I'd like to take you to lunch," Mason said. Zara looked at him and nodded. "All right. Let's do lunch, but first, I think we should go for a walk." Mason smiled and told her to lead the way. Soon they began walking. A few steps later, their hands brushed. He hesitated, then gently reached for hers. Zara didn't want someone ahead of her. She wanted someone beside her. And Mason was going to be just that man.